Happy Sunday, everyone, especially if you're an Arsenal fan and a Manchester City fan, but not so much if you are a Liverpool fan. Arsenal 3, Liverpool 1. Mark Donaldson alongside Luis Miguel Echegaray will be joined momentarily by Mark Ogden from the Emirates. What a strange, crazy game that was. Arsenal deserved the 3 points. Manchester City will be happy with it. The gap at the top is now 2 points, but there's so many places we could start with this one. Arsenal dominant in the first half, Luis Miguel, but they don't go in ahead at the break, having scored through Saka because of some crazy defending. I mean, what happened in this game with the defending specifically at that end of the field?
Yeah, I think strange is a good place to start, MD. I think the first half, Arsenal were in almost complete control. Their XG almost doubled Liverpool's. They were just creating chances after chances. Gabriel Martinelli was absolutely on top form throughout. Bukayo Saka as well. Declan Rice looked formidable. Liverpool had no chance. In fact, 0 shots on target. And yet, they equalized just before the break, and it remains 1-0. And obviously at the break, Jurgen Klopp gives Liverpool players a big yelling to, and Liverpool improve in the second. Darwin Nunez comes on and a few other additions, but yet Arsenal maintain their solidity. And of course, there's that ridiculous mishap, and that's where you mentioned the defensive issues. Probably the worst I've ever seen Virgil van Dijk and Alisson play together in a game. And it wasn't just because of that horrible goal they conceded, which I think they share 50% of the blame. But I think defensively, there were a lot of mistakes from Liverpool's side. They never really got into the game. They never really threatened Arsenal as much as they could have. And Arsenal deservedly win, MD, and it's a massive win. Because if they had lost, then I would have said it's bye-bye title hopes, I think.
Yeah, it would have been 8 points adrift of leaders Liverpool if they'd lost. Now they're just 2 points behind. Let's head to the Emirates live with Mark Ogden. Obviously, the story here, Oggy, is that Arsenal are very much in this title race with a much-needed win. We spoke on Friday on ESPN FC about how it was probably a bigger game for Arsenal. But what are the subheadings to your match report that you are either writing or have written here? Because there was a lot going on today.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're right. Arsenal had to win this game to stay in the title race, even though it wouldn't have cast them too far off the pace. I think if Liverpool had won, it would have been, the points gap would have been yawning away. So for me, it was a strange game, like you say. It was, second half, you're looking at Arsenal thinking they need somebody to make something happen, and it didn't look like they would. But then the person who made it happen was Virgil van Dijk and Alisson, because it was a mistake at the Liverpool end. So, I think generally both teams lack something today. I think Liverpool certainly were missing Dominic Szoboszlai, who has a recurrence of his hamstring problem, so he didn't make the trip from Liverpool. He played against Chelsea, felt something. They really missed him in midfield, really missed his energy. And obviously Conor Bradley was missing today. He's had a family bereavement. So Liverpool just didn't look as sharp as we were against Chelsea. Obviously Mo Salah's still out, but it looked like they were going to get away with it. It looked like second half they came back and they were going to give Arsenal a bit of a beating, I thought, at one point, because the way they started the second half of Liverpool, I thought this is a bad news for Arsenal, but Arsenal kept in it and they got back in it on the back of a mistake, but then capitalised. So somebody just walked into the press room now, was joking away, saying, have they given Arsenal the trophy? Because the celebrations at the Emirates after the game, you would think they just won the league today, but I think that it's a little bit churlish. I think the reality is they've beaten Man City at home now, they've beaten Liverpool at home, and even though they're not playing particularly well, they've beaten their 2 biggest rivals at home, and it will give them real confidence that they can win the next 2. I think the next 2 away games are West Ham and Burnley. Win those, and they've got a real chance of pushing for the title. But there's this a nagging doubt in my mind that Arsenal that are believable. I just don't think that they've got that depth. I don't think they've got the belief within the squad that they can really go all the way. I think, and that is because Man City. I think Man City are that kind of they scare teams in title races because they know what Man City can do. Man City can win 15, 20 games on the bounce, and I think that's the nagging doubt in everybody's mind that no matter how well they do, how many wins they get, Man City will go past them anyway.
Well, City, if they win the 2 games at hand, are now top. Just going back to that person in the press room, there's always one, isn't there? There's always one Grumperson. There's always one that comes in. Exactly. There's always one that comes into a party and says, no alcohol, keep the noise down as well. I understand it. Look, they had to, I say have to win. And Luis Miguel said even at 8 points, they're still in the title race. That was a game they needed to win more than Liverpool. So surely they should be allowed to celebrate, because it wasn't a game of great quality. I thought Arsenal totally controlled the first half, but it wasn't a game you look back on and go, that was just brilliant, because of these mistakes that were made by both teams, Augie.
Absolutely. I think we can listen, you've got to put significance on the result, because the result is a big one. It gets Arsenal right back in the title race. But I think you're right. If you put too much significance on the performances, I think it's wrong. I think both teams were below the best today. They both made mistakes. They both looked like they were vulnerable. But Arsenal came out on top and won 3-1. And all of a sudden, the narrative completely changes. They've beaten Liverpool 3-1. Liverpool haven't lost in the league since they played Tottenham away in September. So that kind of overshadows all of the negative side of the game for Arsenal. And, you know, it's rightly so in many ways, because it's all about winning games, isn't it? But I do think that we have to be realistic. As important as these points are for Arsenal today, there were still enough issues in that team today which you're thinking they're not going to see it a title race. They're just not. And maybe that's because Man City have kind of conditioned us all now to realise that second half of the season they come strong and they blow teams away. They've got Brentford Monday night. You know, they win that game, they're really on the tails of both Arsenal and Liverpool. And I think that's the problem. I think you take Man City out of the equation, you've got a great title race with Man City in it. It's still a very good title race, but I think we all know how it's going to end.
LME, how many times have, whether it's Augie, whether it's James, whoever it is, you, Stevie, Shaka, Craig, talked about Arsenal getting a goal scorer? Now, no Gabriel Jesus today, so Kai Havertz is an interesting one, because of the way that he plays, he kind of attracts defenders to come out, maybe leave gaps, but he's not really a great finisher in an Arsenal jersey. It might come, but thankfully for Arsenal, the deflection off goalkeeper Alisson led to Saka getting the opening goal. What's your thoughts about Kai Havertz, Luis Miguel?
I guess I'll say what Mikel Arteta told me last summer, which is towards the perils of what you were talking about. Kai Havertz is not there to be their clinical goal scorer. Kai Havertz is there to attract attention of defenders, create movement, create spaces, and hopefully finish some goals or create some for other teammates. But he will never be that natural number 9 that they want. In fact, they don't have one. Gabriel Jesus, I'm a big fan of his. He's done a lot in terms of what Brazilians have done in the Premier League, but he is not a natural finisher. He has said it himself, and I've said it from day one, and like you said, so has everybody else. Arsenal need a clinical goal scorer. Now, can they win the Premier League without one? Well, they're going to have to, because the window is closed, and they need to rely, as you mentioned, on that trio, specifically Gabriel Martinelli. And by the way, when Leandro Trossard came on, he gave a different dimension, fantastic solo goal. So there's issues there. Now, the issue that I have, and I do share a little bit of what Augie's talking about, which is fantastic victory, very important victory, but I do worry a little bit when the Champions League returns and other responsibilities return for Mikel Arteta and Arsenal, that they're going to have to win some ugly games. And sometimes you need a clinical finisher to just make it that ugly 1-0. So today was a much needed victory for Arsenal. Now, Augie, again, completely agree. Man City, now that they're reaching, once again, they're close to perfection, everybody else has to do the same. And that's very difficult when you don't have a clinical finisher. So that's my only worry. But what I will say is that the likes of Kai Havertz, the likes of Leandro Trossard, Martinelli, who was fantastic, and Saka, we'll have to see if he's okay because he came off early in that game. They can add dimensions. And when Gabriel Jesus comes back, but you need a clinical finisher, I truly believe, to be the ultimate champion and beat somebody who is almost perfect, if not perfect, like Manchester City.
Right, Augie, let's try and dissect this equalising goal for Liverpool, because Saliba clears it. Saliba, just clear it. Saliba, clear it. Then Raya comes and he's still not touched it. Luis Diaz gets the touch, comes off the arm of Gabriel. Nothing they can do about it. Just an absolute mess. And at that stage, Arteta's probably thinking prior to that equalising goal, okay, really good half, total control. Now we have to build for it. But ultimately, that goal, Augie, led to a second half beginning in which Liverpool had more opportunities in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the second half than they did in the first half. So on little things like that, games can swing. Didn't today, but what a mess.
Yeah, I imagine at half-time, Jurgen Klopp went in and said to his players, look, you've got away with it, you've sneaked yourself back into it, and now just go and win the game. And the way they started the second half, that's what it looked like was going to happen. And the alternative would have been, was Mikel Arteta edgy at halftime because he felt that his team had thrown it away. But that's what happens in games sometimes. That mistakes lead to defeats, and it didn't happen for Arsenal, but it did for Liverpool. And I just think that it's difficult sometimes to say one team is better than the other one. The result says that Arsenal were better than Liverpool, but ultimately it wasn't the case. It was a case of a game of two halves, the old cliche. Arsenal dominated the first half, Liverpool the second half. But mistakes ultimately cost them the result. And it's a strange one because I've seen quite a bit of Liverpool recently, and I thought they were really kind of beginning to surge into some really good form. And I just felt it was nailed on to be a Liverpool-Man City title race. Liverpool have still got that bedrock of experience that won the title 3 or 4 years ago. But today they just look like the game Wednesday night, played today, a couple of injuries, no Mo Salah. It just looked like there was a little bit missing from Liverpool. And I was surprised to see that. Mm-hmm. But let's see how it plays out. I think in terms of bouncing back from this result, I think Liverpool are capable of doing that. I think Arsenal, had they lost, I'm not sure they were. So I think Liverpool, the point I'm trying to make is Liverpool are a more resilient team in terms of bouncing back. They'll be okay. But if Arsenal have a setback in the next few weeks, I'm not sure they're quite as resilient. But, they're still in the title race and they've had a bad month. So, credit to Arsenal. They're still there. They're still clinging on. But with Man City, Kevin De Bruyne has had half a season. He'll be fresh. Erling Haaland's had 2 months off. He'll be fresh. It's kind of ominous, really, isn't it, that Man City, they've got to play Arsenal at the Etihad yet. They've got to go to Anfield as well, Man City. But I think between the three teams, there's enough games between them for this title race still to take another turn. But I do think that turn is going to be at some point City going top and then blowing everybody away.
You spoke about having seen Liverpool a lot of late. What about Arsenal's second go-ahead goal? For the opening goal, Virgil van Dijk, and we're speaking about Kai Havertz, he's 10 yards from where he should be when Odegaard's got the ball and he's out of position, Konaté's back, and it's a bit of a mess for Van Dijk, but not as much of a mess, Hoggy, as the second goal. And that's unlike Van Dijk, and it's unlike Alisson, but I don't know if one leaves it for the other, if there's a call or whatever, but that should not happen.
See, I've seen a bit of Liverpool, but people who see him every week will tell me that Virgil van Dijk hasn't been the same player he was since the injury, and that's going back 2-3 years, and that's going back to the pandemic season. And I think there's certainly ability to that. He's not as mobile as he used to be. I think he's now. I think opponents have realised that you can actually get at Van Dijk and go past him. When he was at his best, you couldn't do that. You could never beat Van Dijk. I think his career or his kind of form is in a bit of a decline. That sounds very dramatic, but he's 33 in the summer. It's inevitable that he's going to lose some of his pace, and I think and some of his mobility. And I think that's happened. And it's affecting his readership of the game. I think Konaté alongside him has had a decent season, but he maybe misses that kind of experience as your Matip. So I just think Van Dijk gets away with it sometimes because he is so calm on the ball and it can be quite clever. But I think opponents have worked out that if you give Van Dijk space and let him drop off, he will dominate the game. If you get at him and run at him, he's got vulnerabilities. I think Arsenal have done that today. And I think it was telling for me that he tried to shoulder charge Martinelli out of the way for that goal. And Martinelli, let's be honest, Van Dijk is a big, imposing player. Yeah. Martinelli is quite a slight guy. And he kind of rolled the challenge and he made a mug of him, really. So Van Dijk is still a great defender, but he's not the defender he was 3 or 4 years ago. And I think that is a reality. And I think, when he said last week after Jurgen Klopp announced his departure that his own future is kind of up in the air. Well, it is because he's 33 in the summer. And at that age, with his contract up next year, what do you do with Virgil van Dijk? Do you retain him, or do you think maybe he has seen better days, but he's still a great defender? So for me, today was an example of Van Dijk's decline. Seems the wrong word, but it is a decline from what he was. Van Dijk's kind of diminishing powers, despite the fact he's still a great defender.
89th minute, Luis Miguel, a second yellow card for Ibrahima Konaté. 90th minute, board goes up, 7 minutes. There's that kind of from the home support. There's that cheer from the away support. And then a couple of minutes later, with Konaté off the field, there's space. Trossard goes for the shot, little deflection of Van Dijk. Probably looked uglier than it was for Alisson, who didn't have the best of games either. And job was done. There's an argument to say that Trossard is in the top 3 finishers at Arsenal, along with maybe Saka and one other. But when you've got that freshness of pace, you've got Gomez having gone to the other side with Trent Alexander-Arnold having come off, and you've got Andrew Robertson on, and by that stage, it was just a bit of a mess. But you still got to score the goal, and he did.
Yeah, he did, and that, I think that was my point earlier about making sure that there's enough fresh legs to supplement that, because that frontline trio that Mikel Arteta likes to use needs to be recycled of sorts. Bukayo Saka had to come off early, so it's important for them. If you don't have a natural finisher, you need to make sure that you have players ready to come on. I will say one more thing, though, MD and Augie. I think it's important to know that I think than any other seasons, if Arsenal played exactly the same game against exactly the same type of Liverpool performance, without Declan Rice, Arsenal lose this game. And I think that Declan Rice was magnificent today.
He was.
The very quiet, subtle things that he did, nullifying the midfield, making sure that the chaotic nature of Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool don't take control in the middle. And Declan Rice did it. And this is exactly why he was bought, to win these big games. He got the winner against Man United. He was great against City, and now today against Liverpool. And that's exactly the type of player that, again, obviously, when you look in the past and what Patrick Vieira used to do, that's exactly what Mikel Arteta needs from Declan Rice. Somebody that whenever you're facing adversity, there's like this strong anchor in the middle that knows what's behind him, knows what's in front of him, can drive forward. And I was looking at him throughout the whole game. When he didn't have the ball, he was controlling the line, positioning everybody. He was magnificent today. And I think as much as we talk about Arsenal needing a striker, it's very important for them to have that kind of player in the midfield, because without him any other season, Arsenal most definitely lose this one.
Okay, I know Augie's going to go to the post-game press conference, so I'm going to wrap this up by getting your predictions, because if City win at Brentford on Monday night, then they are just 2 points off the top of the table with a game in hand. So theoretically, if they win that, they would go top of the table. But we could have 3 teams separated by just 2 points if City win at Brentford. So we'll start with you, Augie. What is your order, your top 3 come the end of the season, given today's result and given that now City are probably the biggest benefactors of what happened at the Emirates today? 1, 2, 3, please.
Declaration. Aston Villa is still in the title race after putting 5
very much, Augie. I didn't say, hey, I didn't say a single thing. I didn't say a thing.
Sorry, but I think that they're still hanging around there. Anyway. They're not going to finish top 3. Sorry, Elemy. Man City are going to win. Man City are going to win the league. Liverpool are going to finish second. Arsenal finish third. And I think there'll be a bit of a distance between each of the places. I think City win by 5 or 6 points. Liverpool 5 or 6 points ahead of Arsenal. I just think that today was a bad blip for Liverpool. I think mistakes by players that you wouldn't expect them to make. If that was Andre Onana and Harry Maguire, I think that it would be, people would be saying, look, that's what they do, but that's unfair. But Alisson and Van Dijk don't often do that. It's just been a bad day for Liverpool. I think they'll finish second and Arsenal finish third.
LME, final word.
I don't want to be somebody that refuses to not accept romanticism. I cannot go with Man City winning this title once again, even though I completely agree with Augie. Haaland back, Kevin De Bruyne looking good, Man City always looking amazing, and Pep Guardiola with a big fat cigar right now. But I think I'm going to remain being romantic, MD. I think that this Jurgen Klopp announcement will be enough to push Liverpool to win the title. And I think it'll be Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal. Villa get 4th, though. We get Champions League.
Well,
we've got to add, it's an important point to make. Man City's got to Anfield, I think, in a month. So that is the game of the season. That is the title decided. If Liverpool can win that game, stay ahead of City, I think that gives them momentum. But that is the game, for me, that will decide the title. Not Arsenal, Man City. It will be Liverpool, Man City.
And Salah probably back for that as well. Look, probably going to be loads of twists and turns. And you know what? You know how football is? Brentford might take something off Manchester City and we'll all have to regroup and say, oh, what about that? Manchester City still favourites. Today, though, Arsenal pretty much had to win. Otherwise, they were 8 points behind Liverpool if they lost. They did. Was it their best performance? They don't care. Some crazy defending, but Arsenal score 3, Liverpool get 1, and Arsenal get all 3 points. Thanks to Augie at the Emirates. Thanks to LME. Mark Donaldson here, ESPN FC on Tuesdays, on Wednesdays, and on Fridays. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.